Mark had a problem. A really big problem. He was in love with his best friend's wife. It all started so innocently. Double dates. Backyard barbecues. Game nights filled with laughter and cheap wine. The four of them were inseparable. Mark and his wife, Sarah, and his best friend David and his wife, Jessica. They were more than friends. They were practically family. They shared holidays, celebrated birthdays, and leaned on each other through the tough times. Mark had known David since college. He was the best man at his wedding, and Mark was the best man at his. Their bond was supposed to be unbreakable. But somewhere along the way, the lines started to blur. Mark and Jessica started texting. Just friendly at first, sharing funny memes and complaining about their spouses in that harmless, joking way. But the frequency of the texts increased. The tone shifted. Soon, the conversation stretched late into the night, long after Sarah and David were asleep. The good morning texts became a daily ritual. The jokes became flirty, filled with inside jokes and double meanings that only they understood. Then, they crossed a line they could never uncross. The flirting became explicit. The fantasies became plans. "We have to stop," Jessica would type, her words a stark contrast to the pictures she had sent just moments before. "This is insane. David can't ever know. It would destroy him. It would destroy everything." Mark would agree, his heart pounding with a mixture of guilt and exhilarating fear. He knew it was wrong. He loved his wife, Sarah. She was a good person, kind and trusting. She didn't deserve this. And David was his brother. The thought of betraying him was like a knife in his gut. But the pull towards Jessica was a force of nature, an addiction he couldn't kick. They never stopped. For 6 long months, they carved out a secret world for themselves. Their affair was a series of stolen moments in cheap hotel rooms on the edge of town, paid for in cash. It was frantic, desperate encounters in the backseat of her car in secluded parking lots. Once, driven by a recklessness that terrified him, they even met at Mark's own house, in the bed he shared with Sarah, while she was at a work conference. The guilt was a constant companion, a heavy cloak he couldn't take off. It was eating him alive, piece by piece. He started losing weight. He couldn't sleep. He'd jump every time his phone buzzed, a jolt of panic shooting through him. He saw suspicion in Sarah's eyes even when there was none. He justified it all with a fantasy. He told himself, and he told Jessica, that this was temporary, that they would eventually leave their spouses. They'd be honest, they'd face the fallout, and then they would start over. Together. It was a lie, but it was a beautiful one, and they both desperately wanted to believe it. Then one Tuesday evening, Mark's phone rang. The caller ID flashed David. Mark's stomach plummeted to the floor. His blood ran cold. He stared at the screen, his thumb hovering over the answer button. Why was he calling? They usually just texted. Did he know? Was this a trap? Was David sitting there with Sarah, about to confront him? He finally answered, trying to make his voice sound casual. "Hey man, what's up?" "Hey, you busy? Want to grab a beer?" David's voice sounded completely normal, cheerful even. It was a perfectly ordinary invitation, the kind they had shared 1,000 times before. But to Mark, it felt like a summons. A judgment. He couldn't say no. That would be more suspicious. "Yeah, sure," Mark managed to say, his voice tight. "The usual place." They met at their favorite dive bar, a dimly lit spot with sticky floors and the smell of stale beer. David was already there, sitting at their usual corner booth with 2 whiskeys on the table. Mark slid into the seat opposite him, his hands shaking so badly he had to hide them under the table. He took a large gulp of the whiskey, the burn in his throat a welcome distraction from the storm in his head. He tried to read David's face, searching for any sign of anger or hurt. But all he saw was his best friend, smiling. David raised his glass. "I need to tell you something, man. Something big." This is it, Mark thought. He braced himself for the accusation, for the rage, for the end of his life as he knew it. He could picture the scene, the shouting, the thrown punches, the inevitable, ugly fallout. "Jessica's pregnant," David said, his smile widening into a huge, genuine grin. "We are having another baby. I wanted you to be the first to know. You're my best friend, man. You're going to be an uncle again." The air rushed out of Mark's lungs. The sounds of the bar faded into a dull roar in his ears. He felt like he was going to be sick, right there on the table. The whiskey churned in his stomach. He tried to smile, to say congratulations, to act like the happy, supportive best friend he was supposed to be. But the words wouldn't come out. Because Mark knew something David didn't. He knew a secret that made this happy news a ticking time bomb. Jessica had told him she was pregnant 3 days ago, in a frantic, tearful phone call. And she had confessed the one thing that had been Mark's deepest fear. She wasn't sure whose baby it was. That conversation with David was on a Tuesday night. By Friday morning, Mark was gone. He just vanished. Sarah woke up to an empty space beside her in bed. His side was cold. His car was missing from the driveway. He hadn't packed a bag. His wallet was still on the dresser, but his keys and phone were gone. There was no note, no text message, no goodbye. He just ceased to exist. Panic set in. Sarah called his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She called David, frantic. They called the police. A search began. A few days later, his car was found abandoned on a dirt road near a remote lake, a popular spot for fishing. The doors were unlocked, the keys still in the ignition. His phone was found on the passenger seat, turned off. His bank accounts remained untouched. His credit cards showed no activity. It was as if he had been driving and simply evaporated into thin air. The police questioned everyone. Sarah was heartbroken and confused. David was devastated, losing his best friend at what should have been the happiest time of his life. And Jessica. Jessica was quiet. She answered the police's questions calmly, her face a mask of grief. She played the part of the concerned friend perfectly. But what really happened to Mark? The theories are endless. Some people in their small town think the guilt finally became too much to bear. They think he couldn't face the consequences of his actions, couldn't live with the fact that he might be the father of his best friend's child. So, he just ran away, started a new life somewhere far away from the mess he created. Others whisper a darker theory. They think David isn't as clueless as he seems. Maybe he found out. Maybe the friendly beer was a test. Maybe he followed Mark that day, or saw a text on Jessica's phone, and his grief turned to rage. Maybe he confronted Mark by that lake, and things got out of hand. After all, a crime of passion can make a man do terrible things. And then there are those who look at Jessica. They see a woman trapped between two men, carrying a secret that could destroy all of them. They wonder if she knows exactly what happened to Mark. Maybe they had a plan to run away together that went wrong. Or maybe, just maybe, she decided that Mark was a loose end, a threat to the comfortable life she had with David. Perhaps she's the one with the darkest secret of all. This is the story of a man who betrayed his best friend, his wife, and himself. It's the story of a web of lies that unraveled in the most devastating way possible. And it's the story of a disappearance that left behind nothing but questions, suspicion, and a silence that is louder than any confession. What do you think happened to Mark? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more true crime mysteries. Thanks for watching.